So yesterday, speaking to a few end-of-life patients, we had some superb and interesting conversations, and I would say rather joyful towards the end of the conversations, which makes this work really enriching and rewarding. And so we started off talking and discussing about how prepared we are for death or transitioning, or perhaps other people see it as other term give it other terms. But yeah, how prepared are we? What prepares us to meet the suffering that's involved in these last stages of when we're dying? And it brings a lot of rich conversation. So, for example, we paused, we thought, we pondered upon these, let's say, unique conversations, because it's often a topic that people shy away from, or perhaps they find morbid, or they don't want to think about how and when we go, and in actuality we don't have a choice how and when we come into the world, and when and how we leave, and it could happen at any moment. So there's a certain immediacy to these conversations, particularly when you're in the final stages, when you know, okay, I may have a few weeks or days left in this world. So some of the first questions is, okay, what impact have I had on those around me? So my interpersonal relationships, what memories and legacy do I leave behind? And this is a really enriching question, because we usually think of inheritance as something physical, money-oriented possessions. So we don't necessarily think of the energy that we leave people, the memories, and those important transactions and conversations that we have with people. And so sometimes we go through life, perhaps avoidance, or with a degree of blindness as to how we all affect each other, our interconnectedness. And so if we really pause and think, okay, what are some of the key people at the various stages of my life that have left you or me with a certain dynamic, a certain energy. And it's not always wounding, it's not always hurtful. It may present itself in different ways. So these energetic legacies can be benevolent. And we all know we have those people who we love and cherish, who supported us, who cared for us, who nurtured us. And we know the effects of having that love in our lives. And we also know the effects of the opposite, of neglect and harm. And sometimes we have direct access to these memories because they're recent. So sometimes office dynamics and bullying and aggression, gossip, slander. Sometimes we can hurt people by avoiding or neglecting or excluding them, or assuming things about people. So there's a lot of ways that we can actually hurt and harm people without simply doing nothing, with standing back and actually watching. So those are energetic legacies, and we see them in families. We see them happening all the time. And sometimes we actually see them so much that they become quite normal, everyday behavior and language. And so they're not normal. There's people may become accustomed to being treated badly or neglectful. It doesn't mean that's right. And so these are the energetic legacies that we can sometimes assess in those moments. Unfortunately, at that point, once you build years of a legacy, you can't turn them around at that point. You can obviously ask for forgiveness, but that person has suffered a lifetime of that kind of treatment. So we see these life reviews quite often in the stages of death. So that's one layer of what people are going through in those stages, and that causes a real existential suffering. Yeah. So part of what we want to do is allow people to explore that, to let go of some of those hidden or subtle or unexplored terrain. So we want to listen and listen compassionately and attentively. And there are other levels of suffering. So as the body and as our minds begin to deteriorate, we no longer function how we used to function. So our energy levels are no longer the same. We can't think as clearly, so we can't process and do the work we need to do in some of those stages. And some people are really independent, and some people don't want help, and some people can't be left alone, so they become too dependent. And so there's a lot of energy shifts and dynamics that people are uncomfortable with, and it's a lot to really think about and process, isn't it? Okay, how am I going to deal with these changes in my body and mind? So the work begins now around contemplating and thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing to prepare for death? I hate to be the bearer of these conversations, but I in so many conversations with people in the last few months, I often hear that death has been their companion. I hear of the multiple losses that people have had since COVID, and a lot of unprocessed grief, particularly for people of color. So loss and grief could mean putting up and dealing with being silenced or oppressed, and not having the space or being witnessed for too long. And simply being an advocate for change and social justice can also take its toll. That we all need spaces to heal and rest and recover. So how do we prepare for death? Well, we're constantly preparing for death every day by what we say, by what we do, how we live, and how we treat each other. In those moments, and as those last few months that we are in this world, it is very difficult to turn those things around. So that the time is now. And a famous Buddhist teacher of mine used to always say that pain in those last few moments and in the last few days is sometimes inevitable. Of course, we can be on medication and sedated, but we can certainly work with our suffering. And these are what some of these teachings are about. Some of the opportunities that we have to be with one another helps us to metabolize some of the suffering, or prepare us to meet it with more skillful and better ways of functioning in those last few moments. Anyway, if you have any questions or themes that you would like to explore on our channel, please get in touch. My name is William Fley, and I will be hosting the monthly grief spaces starting June 16th, 4 to 6 p.m., 4 to 5 p.m. GMT for 1 hour. And we are delivering an 8-week course from September the 1st, 6 to 8 p.m., Honoring Grief 8-week course based on Breathworks Mindfulness for Health course. So we look forward to having you, and take care of yourselves.